Okay, welcome everybody, and thank you all for attending today's grand finale webinar to our Power Webinar series focused on enterprise asset management. Once again, my name is Rick Seisel. I'll be acting as moderator for today's presentation on how to make complex asset management easier with EAM. We are going to go ahead and get started in just a second, but before we do that, I do want to take a moment to reintroduce our All Things EAM presenter, Jim Hammond. Since opening up our Asset Management to the Rescue Power Webinar series a few weeks ago, Jim has so far covered different examples of legislation that have historically impacted America's infrastructure managers, what MAP 21 and the FAST Act will mean for your organization moving forward, as well as best practices for constructing your organization's asset management plan. And today, as part of our grand finale, he'll be demonstrating how AssetWorks EAM solution can help address all of these concerns. So just one last quick note before we get started here, the microphones have been muted. So if any of you do have any questions at any time during the presentation, all of you are encouraged to use the WebEx chat tool on your screen. This icon is located right in the top right corner of your screen and acts as an instant messaging tool. So do please feel free to use the WebEx chat tool to enter any questions. Just be sure to address them to hosts. I'll be happy to relay them to Jim at the conclusion of the presentation today for a brief Q&A session. All right, so Jim, looks like we can see your screen, and you can take this one away whenever you're ready.
Okay, thanks, Rick, and welcome, everybody. I will go ahead and jump right in. Just a quick recap of the agenda. We're going to talk about, a quick review again of what we discussed last week to kind of set the stage for this week's conversation. And with that, we're going to dive into all things assets, right? And when defining any asset type or category, the ability within AssetWorks EAM to be able to set all of your unique attribution by an individual asset or asset type or class, define condition indexes for multiple different asset categories and how to apply those and track those over an asset's life cycle. Creating a risk register or defining asset criticality and going into the implications of those. And then from there, we'll get into developing your capital plans. From capital plans to capital projects to work projects, even down to the individual work order and issuing a part on some work order, how that can trickle up to your override capital plan and be a part of incorporating into your 2017 budget projections and things of that. From there, we'll get into all of the operations, all of the scheduling and assignment of work projects, and all of the applicable materials and inventory management that go along with that, okay? And all the actioning of the work projects and things of that nature. And as you accrue all of this data over an asset or an asset class life cycle, the assessment of that information, to be able to use that data to then make replacement versus repair decisions, or to look at an individual asset or asset class and project that into the future based on, again, all the data that you've accrued. When should you anticipate starting the planning process for replacement and budgeting that out, and then actually actioning the steps of replacing assets or rebuilding new assets? And then, of course, some time for questions and answers as we get going here. Okay. So last week we talked about lessening the risk. When you're developing your asset risk-based and performance-based asset management plan, lessening the risk is one of the key components of that, right? Obviously, gaining efficiencies and safety and improving employee satisfaction, and through these processes, saving money. And through all that, you're establishing a healthy environment for your employees to work in, as well as the citizens that you're serving, okay? We talked about preparing the plan. So in preparing the plan, incorporating reasonable and agreeable levels of service and benchmarking those, and continual awareness of your growth and the demands that are being imposed upon your organization. Coordinating efforts with external agencies and departments to gain efficiencies, and review and right-sizing all of your equipment and fleet as well as your resource allocations, okay? And then when adopting the new plan, is the decision to leverage existing organizational systems or CMS systems, or is now the time to consider adopting a more modern enterprise asset management solution? And that's where we're going to, have the focus of our conversation today, and all the offerings that AssetWorks EAM has to provide, all the different expansive feature sets, and capabilities to be able to manage any infrastructure asset within an organization. Okay. So the ability to be able to manage any type of asset here, it really stems on being able to define any asset type or category. Okay, so whether you're a maintenance manager, public works director, the CIO, or what have you, you need to be able to define any asset type or category within the organization. Okay, and here, in terms of managing any of those asset types, I just got a quick review of our asset management portal, one of the portals within inside of AssetWorks EAM. What this is going to allow organizations to do is break out all of their departments, whether we're talking facilities or perhaps your stormwater management or, you know, even your sign shop. So these are just some examples of how you can categorize assets within those functional groups in any way, shape, or form. The sky's the limit in terms of what you define an asset type is and what an asset category is, okay? And then with the asset management portal, you have the ability to define asset templates. So when you're creating new assets, I simply click on that new asset category template, apply the asset ID, and I've created that new asset. Okay, now behind the scenes through that template, it applies all those default attributions for those assets based on your setup and configuration. And when you do that too, it also, the system will functionally silo those assets. So if I'm in the sign shop, I'm not going to see assets within the water or facilities group. When I'm actually a technician in the field doing the work, I'm not going to trip over other tasks or categories or priority definitions and things that just aren't applicable to the assets that I manage. So again, the ability to manage these assets by all of those functional groups. As well, there is within AssetWorks EAM a batch processing utility that allows individuals to organize all of their legacy data from other systems, massage that into pre-provided templates, and then load that into AssetWorks EAM, facilitating the loading process of all the data that may be managed in the environment. Okay. Just another quick example here too of the ability to manage any type of linear or roadway assets. And as we get into this too, when we're talking about defining any conceivable asset type or category, obviously the GIS component to that is critical, okay? So within AssetWorks EAM, and you're defining your attribution, specifically here we're talking about the GIS attribution, AssetWorks supports any point, linear, polygonal, rolling stock or equipment type assets, and then the application of that through the map. So you can see as an example here, I've got some roadway assets. Off to the left-hand side, as a user of the system, you can define your own asset feature classes within the system here. So I can break this out by item, work order, service request, asset, capital project overlays, and then call out the work that is relevant to me. So the type of asset, the status of the work order, the priority of the work orders, those are all user-definable traits in categorizing all of your GIS attribution for assets when you're working within the system. Just another quick example here to show how I can build out all my polygonal assets, parcels of lands here, and again, some customer configured layouts there for those assets. And then finally, on the slide example here, I've got what it looks like for somebody who might be in a sign shop, right, and filtering on the specific types of signs they might be managing. And again, the sky's the limit on how you do all this. Now, in addition to all of the GIS integration, and I'll touch on too that AssetWorks EAM is not built on top of a GIS software tool or provider. It runs in parallel to and can integrate with any GIS provider out there, right? So understanding too that Esri is the big player in the GIS world, AssetWorks provides an out-of-box integration through its MaxQ tool that then in real time will sync asset and asset attributes between the two systems. Okay, so if I'm out in the field and I change the location of a stop sign, it'll send that data automatically over to a versioned environment within Esri or whatever the GIS provider is. If a new development is being configured inside of the Esri environment, again, all of those assets relevant to that new development and all of their individual attributes will come over and automatically be built inside of the AssetWorks EAM environment. So with that, though, that's the GIS component to that. Now, AssetWorks EAM also supports an unlimited number of customer definable attributes, list attributes. So in this example here, I've got buildings, facilities, buildings, and I'm going to see things that, again, these are list-defined, user-defined attributes for my rental space. Is it, my square footage, my roofing composition, cost per square foot, the windows that make up that building, and what have you, okay? As I move on to the Relationships tab down below, AssetWorks EAM supports an unlimited asset hierarchy. So when you're defining your capital plan, you're actually doing your capital projects, you need visibility into how all of these assets interrelate with each other. So I may have a building asset here, and within the building I may have an elevator bank, and the child assets would be each individual elevator, right? Or I might have the floors broken out, or within a floor given room, and in the rooms all the equipment that and furniture that make up or assigned to that room. However you want to build that asset category is completely configurable to any user, okay? And then just kind of to give different examples here, roadway assets. So I may have a linear segment of road, and along that road I'm going to have attributes defined that might be my route, the jurisdiction that's responsible for that segment of road, the composition of that road, and the altitude and grade elevations and things of that nature, all things relevant to a roadway asset as opposed to a facility asset. Again, all customer definable. Here an example of how an asset hierarchy may be defined against a linear roadway asset. So the parent asset may be the centerline road, but as child component assets of that, I have things like markings, pavement, sidewalks, all defined as their own assets because they have their own inspection and PM program cycles that are applicable. So I can split those up as their own child assets and then manage those independently, and through accruing all of that over time, over each of those assets life cycles, I use that information to build out my project plan and budget projections into the future and what have you, and we'll talk more about that as we go on here. Just another example of the mapping view for a roadway segment. I can visualize everything through a map within AssetWorks EAM, and the maps themselves are interactive, right? So I'm not just seeing a map. I can click on that asset, open it up, view all the attributes and details from the map, action or create new work orders, projects, service requests, things of that nature, okay? So that's the ability to be able to define all of your assets, any asset type or category, sky's the limit, apply all the unique attribution however you need to, and track that over time over each asset's life cycle. And as a part of that is the condition and risk and criticality assessment of each asset type or category. So within our system, you can define a condition index that can be anything you need it to be. It can be, say 1 through 5 for a vehicle, 1 through 10 through a bridge, and maybe 1 through 100 for a segment of road, okay? That's a numerical condition index you can build. It may also be something like orange, green, blue, or low, medium, high, as you can see from that example here. There's no limit onto how you conceive and what your condition index is. If you use something like color coding schemas, then you simply apply a numerical ranking behind the scenes so that red is a critical number 5. It has a high issue there. And through that behind the scenes definition, you can compose and comprise your own unique asset registry. There are also out-of-box reports that AssetWorks provides for things like probability of failure and those kinds of information based on these definitions here, but you can conceive of your own as well, okay? So just another example here, I've got different assets showing, now I've got some numerical values for my risk or criticality and an alphanumeric valuation for my condition, okay? Just examples on how you can build out those factors, and then you can incorporate those into tracking the availability and condition of that asset over time, okay? And as a function of doing that, AssetWorks EAM includes the capital planning portal. Okay, so within the capital planning portal, you can define your budgets for any future year. You can look at your plan budget versus your project budgets and cost projections against those over time. Down the bottom left here, we have a pie chart showing all the different funding sources and percentage breakouts of those funding sources. And then on the right, for those funding sources, what percentage or dollar amounts of those have actually been allocated against the current working budget, okay? I can also break this down by project type. So just a different way of looking at these. So whether it's infrastructure, construction, or refurbishment projects, how am I looking at my actual breakdown, again, by project type? Now, within a given capital plan, you may have one or more capital projects, okay? And this is just a summary list view, line item view of each capital project associated with the given plan. And I might see things like a description and a status and a timeline with a color-coded graphical chart showing where I stand in terms of my timelines, and I'm over in most of these, right? Or I'm getting close to my limit. And what are the budget for each of these projects and percentage of those budgets allocated. Now, this is a line item view, summary view that might be visible from a capital plan. And then I can drill into each of these and then action and act upon the individual capital project as a part of that plan. And I'll show that in just a little bit. Still with the capital plan here, though, and we talk, this gets back to, as a part of establishing your plan, defining your goals and objectives within the organization and communicating those goals, consistently and constantly throughout the organization. Here I've got several defined goals. Within each of those goals, I have measurable metrics. So my one goal in the middle is maintain parks and recreations, land and facilities. And then the measurable targets within that are implement a computerized maintenance management system, or create the Esri tree spatial database, review and prioritize infrastructure projects, right? And I've achieved all those goals, so or measurable targets, so I've reached 100% of my goal. But sky's the limit on defining what your goals are, and then the measurable targets within those goals to determine how are you performing against that plan. And then included in that, too, is the ability to associate any documents you need, or I've got a calendar view where I can see what's going on with all the different projects in an organization, or any notes down there on the bottom right. So that's defining and developing a plan, okay? And you have one or more plans, and plans can roll up to your overriding single plan that manages the whole organization. When we get to the individual project, capital project within a plan, I'm going to be able to define high-level things about that plan, the description, the fiscal year in which it's operating, or project type, okay? Included in that are all of my key stakeholders. And this, again, gets back to the communicating. So as things occur within a given project, approvals or phase changes or new details, all of those can be automatically communicated out to the individuals that are linked to this particular project. And that information can be two-way, back and forth. So there's chat features within the program, so you can ask questions about things that are happening within a given capital project. So here I got, again, my initiator, champion, sponsor, project manager, those key stakeholders within a given capital project. And then all of your attributes that define that particular project. So whether it's risk or scope definitions or environmental sustainability, these are all customer configurable and defined attributes that or dictate, was this project a success, or did it meet the defined goals? Was it within budget? These are all configurable within a capital project. Okay. Each project can have multiple phases, so you can see concept, design, construction, and operations listed here, and broken down with a visual Gantt chart, so you can know the timelines for each phase within a capital project. And within each phase of capital project, I'm going to have unique budget requirements, and perhaps I need to make adjustments and allocations to that budget. And I can track the committed amount of budget over time as I do the work projects and work orders. I can see that and see where I stand on an ongoing basis with this project. I can see things like what are my planned and actual dates for start and completions. And on the top right there, I might see the overriding project's budget, total amount used, what do I have available, and what percentage of my funding sources have been allocated to this budget, okay, to be able to track in detail where do I stand with this budget. Another capability is to be able to define score and rankings and to vote on all of the projects that are defined out there. So you can define what your voting processes are. You can have unlimited number of different criteria in which you vote on, and then be able to view what all of the stakeholders' voting results are compared to your voting results, and then use that information to prioritize and rank projects however you need to within your organization, okay? Again, it gets back to the communication. Once you have a capital project, you want to action this capital project. From that, you can actually generate work projects. And a work project may consist of activities, work orders, or service requests. You can see here a visual Gantt chart, which is broken down into a timeline. That first row there is from April to May. I'm going to do a mill and overlay on some defined segment of roadways. And that particular task right there may be represented as an actual work order within the system. Okay, so ultimately, whether it's all those parts and materials issued to the work order itself, rolling up to a project, rolling up to a capital project, and ultimately the plan, all of that information is interrelated and connected and viewable, applicable, whatever role in the organization an individual has. Okay, so I can define my projects, execute the work on actual work orders, and what have you. This is the operational side of things now, where what I can also do is, above and beyond capital projects, I need to maintain these assets through just standardized preventative maintenance programs, inspection routines, corrective and predictive maintenance patterns. I can set all of that up in any conceivable way, so any particular asset or asset class can have its own unique PM frequency. That means it might come due by days, weeks, months, any number of multiple meters, hours, flow, miles, whatever that may be. Define all of those patterns when those things come due, and as they come due, I can see a list here of what's due, and I can filter down however I need to. Now, I can pick and choose and create work orders from these, or I can set the system up to automate it for me. And then based on employee profiles or crew or contractor profiles, work automatically gets generated and assigned to those individuals, okay? And then as a function of that, I had the ability to get a visual representation of what's going on within the organization. So as an example here, I've drilled into a given day, and I can see all the employees listed on the left-hand column there. And that green clock next to one of those employees might represent that that employee's logged into their shift, but they're not charging time against anything. There's a wrench next to some of those employees, and that indicates they're logged into the shift and they're actively charging time against some job, right? And then the color-coded assignments that you see there also indicate things like perhaps an individual is in training all day or out sick, or the blue might indicate an appointment assigned against some scheduled PM service. Yellow might be an actual repair or reactive type work order on the fly. And then I have insight just by looking at this, what's going on today. I might need to offload some of this work into the future because there's too much going on. Or a specific individual has too much assigned, so I can reassign a work order through drag and drop to another individual who's not as busy today, okay? So I can look at this at the employee, crew, contractor level. I can look at it at daily level, weekly, or monthly, and get insights into my resource availability and any alterations that I might need to make. Okay, that's the operational side of things. Now, in terms of the actual work itself, here I might have a work order against a linear asset, and I need to know where along that linear asset am I doing the work. So I can define all my reference markers and say, hey, I'm going to do it from this intersection to that intersection, as you can see from that slider tool there. And then as I do that work along that segment of linear asset, I can have an unlimited number of tasks. Also define, you can see remaining hours where I set standards so I know how long it should take to do work. So I can do all my performance analysis against my labor. And then as I do certain work, activities may be required. Above and beyond just posting my labor and parts and materials used, a certain activity may require measurements. It may require input of some data or attachments. So to kind of show some of that, I can post all of my labor here, whether that's real-time labor capture or direct posting that I worked 3 hours, or even the ability to say, I worked on this from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. Multiple ways to input your labor. And your parts and materials, I may have a standards parts list, as you can see by that highlighted yellow button tab up top, where if I do some job, all of the parts list and materials automatically gets applied to that project or work order. Or I can simply barcode scan that. The system is completely barcode enabled, so I can scan it, go to Home Depot, scan the box, and that part gets posted or material gets posted. I can request materials. I don't know what the part or material ID might be. I just put in a comment, say, I need this, and send that off to the parts or materials manager to action those items accordingly. And also search. So a lot of different ways to quickly and easily get all the materials needed on a work project or job. Also with that, commercial work. The ability to even expose our system and grant access to commercial contractors, whereby they have focused rights to be able to go in and input their vendor ID, the contract that you have with them, the specific invoice for the work they're doing, and then all the work they do, the labor, parts, materials, and what have you. So that can be done as well. Unlimited file attachments. So whether it's a work project, a capital project, a work order, an employee record, a purchase order, sky's the limit. AssetWorks EAM supports an unlimited number of file attachments of any file type. So as I do some activity, specific attachments may be associated with that job. Or if I go to on-site, I can take a picture of the before and a picture of after and associate that with the job that I'm doing, okay? Or again, if I'm doing some activity, the system may require that I record some information. And depending on what that is, it may even then update those attributes automatically. It's a configurable option within the system. So I do some activity, requires these measurements or recordings, and then updates the attributes. And again, it would even send that off to Esri if desired, or the other GIS platform. Another example here, the ability to provide grids that record, in this example, all the information you might need to do a roadway inspection, right? So whether it's, you know, the degree and level of alligator, longitudinal traverse, rutting, raveling of a segment of road, and from inputting that data, generating a PCI IRI value, excuse me. And while AssetWorks EAM is not an actual pavement system, you can still apply the calculations, come up with the PCI IRI value, and see where those values are and what they are along segments of roadway. Take all that data, send it over to an actual pavement management system, let it do the analysis, and then through an integration, it will send back recommended projects for mill and overlay campaign versus chip and seal or pothole recovery or whatever it may be, okay? So those capabilities are in the system as well. In terms of materials management, incorporated into the base product, AssetWorks EAM includes a complete enterprise inventory management solution. So that includes all your purchasing and requisition, all of your inventory counts and replenishment methodologies, whether it's FIFO, LIFO, system average, all that. And this is supported at an unlimited number of inventory locations whereby individuals can request transfers and authorize transfer of materials among all of the different environments, okay? So very robust and integrated with all of the work and project management capabilities, so that when I issue materials against a project, it decrements those volumes of inventory from the stockpile, okay? So whatever level that may be, from a spark plug on a vehicle to a pile of salt in a yard, you can manage all of those inventories. There are also an example down here at the bottom. You can see KPI gauges and dashboards. An unlimited number of these may be defined. However you need to apply your key performance indicator against a particular gauge, and you have that real-time visualization of how you are performing against your defined metrics, okay? And those can be embedded directly into end-user portals. So wrapping up here, going from the you know, all of the capital projects to all of the work projects and activities managed, you take all of that data as you action them throughout the entire life cycle, okay? So whether we're talking at a capital plan, all your budgeting, down to a bolt applied to an individual work order, all of that data at all levels you're going to accrue over the life cycle of an asset class, of an individual asset, and you can use that to derive or create a graph similar to what you're seeing here. So that curved line represents a deterioration curve that's been applied to a specific asset category, okay? The dotted yellow line represents the threshold in which that asset, if you drop below that condition threshold, you need to replace that specific asset, okay? And then looking at that, you can see the two lines intersect somewhere midway through 2018. So in setting up this asset class or category, you can anticipate that you would need to replace that particular asset mid-2018, okay? But down the bottom, you can see when that specific, the pump in this case, it went into service in 2008, and based on the definitions and life cycles you've defined for that asset, you've anticipated to begin planning for its replacement midway through 2017. You need it replaced by the beginning of 2018. So that's what your expectations were. But in reality, what you see is those dotted lines above the curve, those represent either calculated or manually recorded condition assessments against that pump asset. So what you're seeing is, even though I have that expectation based on the deterioration curve and the condition threshold, I'm getting much better performance against that pump. So I could reasonably expect to squeeze out another year, maybe two, lifespan out of that asset. So if I'm making my replacement and replace versus repair analysis decisions, or when I'm going to plan for replacement, I'm not going to replace this pump. I'm going to look at the next one down on the list and see where it stands. So all of that data, as you're using the system, will automatically create a graph like you see here and tell you, with one click of selecting that asset, where does this asset stand within its life cycle? How is it performing? Okay? So full function, be able to gather and then assess the performance of that asset through all of the other processes within inside of AssetWorks EAM. And I know I've gone a little long here, so with that, I'm going to open it up to any questions that may be out there.
All right, thanks, Jim. And we are going to open up the floor for some of your questions at this time. And just as a quick reminder, if any of you do have any questions, you can send them to host using the WebEx chat tool on your screen. Provided that we do have enough time, I'll pass your question over to Jim and we'll get you an answer. So Jim, about midway through your presentation today, one of your screens you talked about assigning different risks and priorities. One of the attendees had asked you to go into a little bit more detail about how these factors are set up in EAM and also how they contribute to the probability of failure metric that you had mentioned.
Sure. Yeah. So I touched a little bit on this, but for any asset category that you define in your system, you can create a condition index. Okay. And for that condition index, again, it might be numeric 1 through 5, 1 through 100, whatever that may be, or orange, green, black, or whatever, and then you can apply that to that asset to track the condition. You can similarly use field to define the risk and create a list, again, whatever you want that risk ranking to be, 1 through 5, low, medium, high, however that may be that you define. And then the out-of-box reports provide that level of information about probability of failure using those data that are recorded over time, right? So when I go and I update a condition or a risk setting, it doesn't just forget about the old one. It's going to record those and remember those over time. And as you saw that plotted on that graph, so it'll give you a ranking. So using all that information that it records over time, the report then analyzes that and gives you your probability of failure type information, okay? And then above and beyond what we provide out of box through our reporting capabilities, you can build any risk register that you may want because there's no one size that fits all. So you can do that however that's applicable to the asset category or to your unique business rules within your organization.
All right, thanks, Jim. You touched on integrations quite a bit, and particularly with pavement management was one of the examples you had shared. Can you provide some other examples of integrations that we can handle with AssetWorks EAM?
Sure. Yeah, there's really two types of integration. So we have a software, MaxQ is the name of the software that we developed in-house that is used for all integrations, okay? And those two types of integrations that MaxQ is really what we call the out-of-box integrations or our custom integrations. Out-of-box integrations are one that we provide for things like the Esri touchpoint, right? Because everybody who wants to deploy EAM is going to need to integrate with some GIS platform. So that out-of-the-box integration is already built ahead of time, and it's simply a matter of plugging in those connecting points, the web services and asset feature classes and things of that nature. There are other out-of-box integrations besides Esri, such as GPS AVL. We are partner with Verizon Network Fleet, Zonar, or NAPA for parts and inventory management. Those are a couple of the out-of-box. And then in terms of the custom integrations, almost every one of our implementations has some degree of custom integration built in. And that can be anything from your financial systems. We've integrated with the likes of SAP and Oracle and PeopleSoft and Tyler Munis and Lawson and Dynamics and on and on and on. To things like SCADA systems or, a timekeeping system like Kronos or ADP. This gives you a kind of general idea of the type of the custom integrations that we develop. And the degree to which a specific integration touches some third-party environment is also configurable. What I mean by that is they can be two-way real-time integrations. Something happens, it sends data off to the third system. It might just be that we gather all of the transactional work and billing information, and at the end of the month, it gets pushed off in a batch one time at the end of the month. to that third-party environment. So the degree to which these integrations handshake with other systems is also very, very configurable.
Okay, and we also have a quick question about reporting capabilities. Can you expand on some of the systems reporting capabilities and how they pertain to asset management?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Just high level of the reporting capabilities, we have an integrated version of Crystal Reports. So we leverage the power of Crystal Reports with over 250 out-of-box Crystal Reports and additional 50 ad hoc query reports that are provided out-of-box, and all of those can be modified however you need to, or you can create an unlimited number of your own custom reports. And when you print something like a work order or a purchase order or an employee record, you're printing an underlying Crystal report. So if you don't like the layout when you click the print button inside of some portal, find the underlying report, modify it to your needs. So it just lends to the configurability and making sure that all the reporting needs meet an individual customer's requirement. All of the reports, they can be emailed, scheduled, exported to any industry standard format that's out there, right? So again, just accessibility to provide data outside of the system. The ad hoc query tool that I briefly mentioned gives users the ability, that don't have access to Crystal Developer or don't understand Crystal Developer reports. The ad hoc query tool empowers every end user to build their own reports. Okay, and you can restrict and configure access to database objects based on that individual's role within the organization. So again, empower users to build their own reports. They can embed those reports into their own portals, and they can data in real time as they're working, okay? And then the last degree of reporting capabilities too is the dashboards module. So we saw a very quick overview of some of the dashboards that are available, but you can create any key performance indicator, associate that with any gauge or chart, and take those and embed those into your own portals, and then see in real time how you're performing against your defined metrics. Okay, so very powerful. Picture is worth 1,000 words to be able to see those and to know how you're performing. That's really the third main component to Crystal, to reporting in general in the system.
All right, Jim. Well, thank you very much. Excellent job. And it does look like that's all the time we have for today. At this time, I would like to thank everyone again for taking the time to attend today's presentation and any other presentations you may have had a chance to attend within our Power Webinar series. As you can see here, Jim's contact information is available here should any of you have any other questions or concerns that come up. And we do really hope that all of you enjoyed these Power Webinars and found each of these presentations helpful. I did have a few of you that reached out during today to see about some of the first two presentations. And just to confirm, we will be sending out one last thank you email in the next few days with a link to all 3 webinar recordings. Feel free to share that amongst your teams and get back to us with any questions on those as well. So Jim, let's just stick around another minute or so in case anyone has any final questions. Otherwise, everyone have a great day, and thanks for participating in our EAM Power Webinar series.